Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So we were talking about energy and power signals. We actually differentiated between them. We actually worked out an example of each of those signals. The other thing that I want to look at is actually something called Parseval's theorem. Parseval's theorem is a very easy theorem to remember. The theorem says this: what if you have an energy signal or a power signal in time domain, you would find the same thing, exactly the same representation of that signal in frequency domain. It does not lose any energy or power once you transform that signal from time domain to frequency domain. Basically, that's what the theorem is saying. Theorem says this: the energy of a signal or a power of a signal in time domain is exactly going to be the same of that both of those, either of these signals, either in frequency domain. So it does not change in terms of its energy. If it's an energy signal, if it's a power signal, it does not change its power once you transform the signal from time domain to frequency domain. Let's look at some of the examples. So let's look at an example. What I mean to say. So let's say I have a signal like this. I have a signal x of t that is a cos 2 pi f1 of t, b cos 2 pi ft f2t. All right. So I know, okay, for energy signal it's an aperiodic signal, for power signal is a periodic signal. So let's look at the signal. We just calculated actually a power signal. We actually calculated the power of a cos signal. What was it? It was actually, if you remember, it was amplitude squared divided by 2. When remember in my last video, I'll actually post this video. In my last video, we actually calculated this the power of this particular signal. This was what? It was b squared divided by 2. In this, we have an amplitude of a squared plus 2 plus b squared 2. So it does not changes anything once you take a signal in time from time domain to frequency domain. It does not changes anything. Let's look at another example. Let's look at an example of a Fourier component. The definition of a Fourier, x of t is given as a naught plus summation as n goes from 1 all the way up to infinity an cos 2 pi f naught t plus bn sine 2 pi f naught t. So what is going to be the power signal? Everything is just going to be squared, isn't it? So this is just a DC term. This is going to be squared based on what we calculated earlier in my previous video. So this is just going to be summation. Nothing will change. The signal will be transformed with all of its integrity in terms of energy and power, but it will just transform into frequency domain. This is going to be n squared divided by 2. Don't get confused. This is just some variable term. In the power signal example that we calculated, it was actually b squared divided by 2. So it's just going to be this component term squared divided by 2 plus bn squared 2. This is known as Parseval's equality. Signal does not loses anything when you switch that signal from time domain to frequency domain. So let's look at another example. So this is for Fourier series. So how do I calculate this? Look at my previous video. It's exactly the same thing. Let's look at another definition of Fourier. In terms of an example, we also looked at a definition of Fourier in terms of this, where we have c naught plus n goes from 1 all the way up to infinity cn cos 2 pi n f naught t some phase n. Okay, what is going to be the power of this signal once I transform this from time domain? This was a time domain signal into frequency domain. This is going to be c naught squared summation as n goes from 1 all the way up to infinity cn squared divided by 2. Whatever that amplitude component is just going to be squared divided by 2, because we have already calculated this. We already learned how to calculate this. Same thing, another example in terms of Fourier series that we looked at. Another example was this form of a Fourier. X of t is equals to n as it goes from negative infinity to positive infinity, x of n e to the j pi j 2 pi n f0t. What is going to be the signal? What is going to be the power of the signal? It's not changing anything. It's just going to be xn squared. That's it. Magnitude squared of this. So all three, these are known as Parseval equality of a Fourier series in three different forms. This was in a trigonometric form, this was in a complex form, and this was in a phase angle form. So that's how simple it is. So always remember, when it comes to Parseval's theorem, is this: when you take a signal and you shift that signal from time domain to frequency domain, it does not lose any type of energy or power of that particular signal. So and in last video we have learned how to actually calculate this. So based on the what we have done in last video, we're just simply writing down the amplitude of this, squaring it, and dividing it by 2. So I hope you like this small tutorial on Parseval's theorem and Parseval identity and equalities of Fourier series and different signals. And if you have any questions, leave it in the comment section, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel.